Prevailing doctrine held that the jungle perimeter at Point Cruz was secure, supplied at over 800 hours with precisely 7,500 rounds of .30-06 ammunition, 18 crates of compo rations, and 12 gallons of hydraulic fluid delivered for the battalion's 3 M3 half-tracks. Commanders in the 132nd Infantry Regiment logged these allocations and authorized a projected 96-hour occupation cycle, establishing 4 supply caches at 90-meter intervals behind the secondary trench line. Patrols expected limited hostile harassing fire. The Japanese presence was underestimated based on human intelligence at or 545 hours, indicating reduced activity. No additional sniper foils or sandbag augmentation was requested. Operational planning structured the assault at Point Cruz on a predicted 47-minute resistance window, derived from previous contact patterns and a projected 22% casualty rate for rifle companies advancing along the 41-meter jungle gap. In reality, engagement duration exceeded 4,320 minutes, with the battalion sustaining fatality rates approaching 31%. The loss of 14 men in 72 hours marked an unanticipated attritional spike. Sector medical logs recorded a 13-minute median evacuation lag, with field dressings depleted by noon on January 23, 1943. The timeline of expected relief and advance was inverted, subjecting command assumptions to critical re-evaluation. Japanese firing positions constructed northeast of 9-95 to U.S. 159 to 54-36 E utilized natural bamboo cover with platform elevations of up to 2.1 meters, calibrated for clear lanes of fire. Recorded wind speeds averaged 13.3 miles per hour, with gusts peaking at 15.6 miles per hour during major engagements. Second Lieutenant John George's Winchester Model 70 delivered consistent point-of-aim accuracy in variable crosswind and high humidity environments, with the Lyman Alaskan scope retaining 0 despite repeated shock from round cycling. Rifle lens fogging was minimal due to 48-minute lens acclimatization procedures before dawn. Assessing overall combat throughput, the battalion expended 5,800 rounds of .30-06 in 72 hours, with only 11 meters of territory secured beyond initial lines. Resupply requests for additional ordnance and medical stores outpaced the sector's handling capacity, reflecting operational standstill. The disparity between resources committed and limited territorial gain registered as a critical vulnerability in American tactical posture, exposing doctrinal flaws under protracted sniper engagement conditions. Strategic assumptions regarding jungle warfare evolved in response to these newly quantified losses. Primary theater coordinates for the action were fixed at 9-25-12-48, 159-54-36 DE, approximately 3,800 meters west of Lunga perimeter. The friendly force consisted of the 132nd Infantry Regiment, reinforced by 168 additional personnel, amassed from 2 support companies, 3 M3 half-tracks, 1 M19-117A1 machine gun section, and an assigned medical detachment of 21. Morning muster at 0630 hours verified a head count of 1,031 men, with 9 radio operators, equipped with SCR 300 units. The battalion's command post was situated under double canopy jungle with 27-meter visual clearance from the eastern approach road. Enemy order of battle, derived from field intelligence, intercepts confirmed the presence of 11 Japanese snipers equipped with Arisaka Type 98 rifles positioned within 2 parallel trench lines, each 54 centimeters in depth, supplemented by log-reinforced fighting pits, spaced 18 meters apart laterally. Observation revealed 3 firing platforms constructed at 1.8, 2.0, and 2.1 meters above ground, angled to cover primary movement corridors. Defensive obstacles included an estimated 640 meters of barbed wire in double-strand configuration and 4 communication trenches with 40-centimeter lipped parapets for crawl access. The effective zone of fire overlapped with the American Secondary Reserve Line. The battalion's logistics ledger, as of 22nd January 1943, documented 7,500 rounds of .30-06 for M1 Garand rifles per company, distributed in bandoliers of 8 clips, and 540 rounds per M1 T-17A1 machine gun. Fuel allocation for half-tracks was capped at 48 gallons per vehicle, extending a maximum operational radius of 26 miles from the log supply dump. Supplementary rations included 18 crates of compo rations, 2,300 water purification tablets, and 6 Red Cross field aid kits per section. The exposed road supply line from Lunga Point to Point Cruz measured 4.8 miles, with 30-minute minimum resupply cycle times under non-combat conditions. Weather reports for the 41-hour period prior to engagement showed visibility at 133 yards at 0615 hours, declining to 98 yards in afternoon showers. Ground viscosity measurements from engineering sections recorded a 0.41 coefficient, resulting in slow movement and high risk of vehicle bogging. Ambient humidity averaged 86%, peaking at 91%, causing increased weapon and scope condensation. Tactical formations compensated with triangulated 2-squad advances, with an interval of 11 meters between skirmish lines and 6-man support groups in Overwatch. The cumulative influence of adverse weather and micro-terrain dictated a forward posture favoring decentralized command and rapid sniper team deployment. Initial hostile contact occurred at 0736 hours at a range of 62 meters, when a forward rifleman was struck by a high-velocity Arisaka Type 98 round. Engine revolutions on the nearest M3 half-track spiked to 2,400 RPM to reposition behind the western coconut log embankment. The Winchester Model 70, chambered for .30-06, was brought online by 2nd Lieutenant John George. Its bolt-action cycling measured at under 1.1 seconds per shot, with the Lyman Alaskan 2.5x scope preset for 100-meter parallax. Immediate return fire from standard-issue M1 Garands was initiated, but failed to neutralize obscured targets along the 41-meter tree line. Japanese snipers executed coordinated enfilade fire 11 minutes into engagement, increasing the rate of fire to approximately 37 rounds per minute, distributed among 11 Arisaka Type 98 rifles. Bullet impacts registered against the triple palm cover and soft ground at an average interval of 1.6 seconds for the first 17 minutes. Intermittent muzzle flashes revealed lateral repositioning as enemy marksmen traversed 7 to 9 meters between pre-dug firing wells. U.S. return fire recorded only 2 probable hits in the initial phase, with 3 additional casualties sustained in under 18 minutes. Supporting indirect fire assets, including one 60mm mortar squad and M19-170A1 machine gun section, delivered an adjusted payload of 37 rounds during the first 2 windows of contact. Each 2.16 kilogram high-explosive mortar shell achieved a standoff burst radius of 5.3 meters, targeting presumed sniper nests at 10-second intervals. Wire communications, executed through SCR 300 sets, logged 7 confirmed fire direction updates to battalion command from 0754 to 0835 hours. Communication reliability dropped to 74% due to atmospheric interference and foliage density, requiring 6 message repeats. By 10:20 hours, the tactical breaking point was established at position 9 to 2519 ters, 159 to 5453E, with 1,290 rounds of .30-06 and 120 mortar rounds expended. American forward movement had been halted for 2.7 hours, with the battalion's left flank compressed and 2 M3 half-tracks immobilized by terrain. Unit morale reports indicated rising fatigue and ammunition depletion among skirmish lines, and a total of 6 men had been evacuated for wounds as John George began systematic counter-sniper assessment protocols. Outpost status was maintained only by concentrated sniper engagement. At 08:05 hours, 2nd Lieutenant John George, scanning the coordinates west of Point Cruz at 9°2512 by S, 159 to 5436 E, identified a lateral depression in the Japanese perimeter, a 4-meter segment where undergrowth thinned and interlocking foliage had been recently compressed. Through the Lyman Alaskan 2.5x scope, George observed disrupted soil patterns and abnormal exposures, recorded in his field notebook as the precise weak point allowing indirect enfilade and blind field approach against sniper nests situated between 32 and 60 meters beyond the tree line. This location, previously overlooked by forward elements, offered an exploitable axis for infiltration. The ad hoc section rapidly consolidated, dividing into 3 two-man teams supported by a 4-man covering element. Standard loadouts were redistributed, with each scout equipped with the Winchester Model 70 rifle, 30.06 ammunition, average load, 7.5 kWh, 16.5 lbs per man, and grenades, while the support element carried extra M1 Garand magazines and a single SCR 536 radio. Team configuration allowed George to supervise precision engagement and coordination, maximizing fire discipline while maintaining the 9-man unit within optimal weight and mobility parameters for sub-100-meter advances. Initial infiltration commenced at 08:07 hours through brush providing less than 11 yards of concealment before the terrain transitioned to open flatland, exposing movement to direct observation from the nearest Japanese sniper position. Enemy Arisaka. Type 98 rifles had a turret traverse speed restricted by prone emplacements, estimated at under 18 degrees per second, limiting their effective tracking under sudden shifts in lateral cover. George noted compressed vegetation near meter marker 5, indicating primary enemy observation, lobe overlap, and creating a critical, fleeting window of only 4 to 6 seconds for his advance. At 08:10 hours, a Bangalore torpedo section was deployed. The lead assault pair placed a 1.7-meter Bangalore M1A1 tube directly beneath the visible route network obstructing passage. The charge, containing approximately 4 lbs of TNT filler, was fitted with a friction ignition detonator and a time fuse cut to a 24-second delay, calibrated for controlled demolition that would maximize fragmentation effects but avoid sympathetic detonation of enemy ordnance caches believed to be buried nearby. Chemical initiation was confirmed by visible wickering of the igniter cord. The torpedo detonation at 08:11 hours generated a shock pulse measured at an estimated 2,400 meters per second along the route network, expelling debris radially and breaching a 1.1-meter diameter gap in the jungle density. The initial assault element cleared the breach at 3.6 meters per second, covered by suppressive fire from the support team. Simultaneous movement was documented using the SCR 536 radio's time check, ensuring all advances synchronized within a 7-second envelope, critical to reducing exposure to anticipated Japanese counterfire. The Bangalore M1A1, employed in the breach, utilized a 2-section steel tube design, total length 1.7 meters, diameter 50 millimeters, charged with 1.8 kilograms, 4 LEBs, of molded TNT filling. This ordnance, manufactured to Ordnance Department 1942 standards, achieved a brisance, rate of explosive shattering, of 6,900 meters per second at maximum theoretical confinement. Each segment was fitted with a coupling sleeve, allowing extended reach and minimized profile during manual emplacement. Upon initiation, the explosive column produced a supersonic detonation velocity, generating both immediate overpressure and secondary spall effects, crucial for clearing dense route barricades and improvised wire obstacles within a defined radius of 2 meters. The Japanese perimeter at Point Cruz relied on pre-established blocking positions with mutually supporting arcs of fire measured at target interlock angles of 43 to 62 degrees in their standard bunker deployments. Defensive geometry analysis indicates overlapping machine gun, Type 92, fields were undermined by natural obstacles which introduced dead zones approximating 21 degrees adjacent to the route network. These fire gaps became even more significant under counter-battery engagements initiated by Georgia's precision fire. Analysis of MG-42 emplacements, captured post-assault, showed traverse limiters restricting coverage in lateral depressions to under 26 degrees, resulting in at least 2 sectors completely unprotected during the breach. Attacking the pillbox positions, Georgia's section deployed a pair of M2 flamethrowers, each with a napalm charge, burning at near 100 degrees Celsius, and a maximum continuous discharge rate of 0.7 liters per second for 7 seconds. The mixture's high viscosity, paired with the pressure regulator's 2,550 kilopascal output rating, enabled the stream to saturate vent apertures and observation slits at ranges of 18-22 meters. Recorded fuel expenditure for the initial phase was 6.2 liters, with flame saturation sustained for the 13 seconds required to neutralize visible hostile activity in each of the 2 eastern blockhouses. Ballistic data from post-attack reconnaissance estimated satchel charge effectiveness. 4.2 K of Composition B deployed by third element, yielding a calculated surface blast radius of 5.4 meters and internal overpressure exceeding 7,500 psi at epicenter. Overpressure rapidly dropped to sub 1,600 psi beyond the 7-meter mark, aligning with known lethal thresholds for structural destruction of non-reinforced earth and log pillboxes. Fragments recovered at the site showed radial pitting consistent with percussive blast effects. Japanese small arms, ammunition stocks within the affected zone suffered sympathetic cook-off in at least 2 instances, exacerbating confusion among defenders and resulting in secondary detonations, spaced 3.4 and 4.1 seconds post-initial breach. Evidence consolidation from company radio intercepts confirms the breach widened the incursion corridor by 6.2 meters within the first 8 minutes post-detonation, as relayed through 3 contemporaneous SCR 300 logs. Reports time-stamped between Aero 813 and Aero 821 hours document progressive encroachment to marker 11, as well as enemy radio silence intervals coinciding with precision rifle fire directed into communications trenches. American field observers recorded the advance's progression on scaled overlay maps, registering displacement velocities averaging 3.4 meters per second and identifying 2 previously undetected lateral trench spurs, granting further access for advance teams. The advance up the cleared slope toward the first enemy line was achieved at a consistent elevation gain of 13.6 meters over a 41-second interval. This ascent was conducted under a combination of suppressed Japanese small arms fire and stray shrapnel from follow-on Bangalore entries, with each team documenting their position via SCR 536 radio check every 10 seconds to track movement along the designated axis. Primary resistance was encountered at the 17-meter plateau, where in place Type 98 riflemen initiated harassing fire from protected defilade, but the American assault's rapid, synchronized progression and overwhelming close-range firepower forced enemy marksmen to withdraw, limiting accuracy of resistant fire and mitigating further casualties among advancing infantry. From Aero 82 to Aero 817 hours, casualty counts among American elements stood at 1 wounded for the lead assault team and no fatalities, while expended ammunition tallied at 29 rounds of 30.06 and 58 rounds from supporting M1 Garand rifles. Flamethrower propellant supply was reduced by 48% following saturation of the two main blockhouses, with secondary expenditure on suppressive fire from covering elements consuming over 80 rounds in the same window. New radio orders issued at 08 hours by battalion headquarters called for consolidation at the forward trench line, prioritizing establishment of a hasty fire base and perimeter defense rather than immediate exploitation, as intelligence assessed a likelihood of Japanese counter-assault given the scale of the breach and loss of defensive cohesion. The immediate aftermath of the operation resulted in 3 Japanese bunkers neutralized, 2 machine gun nests silenced, and the capture of 7 enemy prisoners from the disorganized rear trench segment, all verified by head count and captured weapon serial logs. American engineers documented the capture of 1 intact Japanese Type 92 heavy machine gun and recovery of enemy signals equipment, providing actionable intelligence on Japanese force disposition north of Point Cruz. These outcomes represented the first major breach of the Japanese perimeter in 72 hours and directly set conditions for the subsequent formation of dedicated American sniper teams within the 132nd Infantry Regiment, tagged for follow-on offensive operations and doctrinal analysis by Guadalcanal, command by 0820 hours. Did you know that the 132nd Infantry Regiment was repeatedly promised fresh sniper rifles and telescopic sights as part of the Army's new priority shipments in early 1943, but over 90% of these orders were redirected to the North African campaign before reaching Guadalcanal? American frontline doctrine expected every rifle platoon to maintain a minimum of 2 scoped rifles on hand. Yet at Point Cruz, 0 official sniper rifles were available due to a failure in both sea and air resupply chains. Quartermaster reports from January 1943 list 41 Model 70 rifles requisitioned, but only 2 were delivered, 1 going to Second Lieutenant John George. Food and medical supplies were also depleted, a side effect of priority rerouting to higher-profile theaters. Surviving Japanese field orders retrieved after the engagement revealed that the enemy snipers were neither elite nor specially trained. Several were replacements from engineer sections temporarily issued Arisaka rifles due to severe infantry attrition. Morale reports from captured Japanese diaries detail privation, with one entry stating, "Rations 3 days late. Single cigarette passed between 5 men. Rifles rust from rain." Ammunition for the Type 98 was rationed to as little as 8 rounds per sniper per day. The lack of supporting troops forced Japanese snipers to operate in isolated pockets, reducing their communications and leading to fatal delays in coordinated firing. Unseen by most historians, Point Cruz's thick undergrowth and intermittent salt fog created visibility bands, typically under 41 meters, during the 72-hour duel, a far cry from open field sniper textbook conditions. The jungle, saturated from nightly rains, produced humidity above 90%, causing persistent lens fogging and recurrent scope failure. At least 19 of 51 fielded Lyman, Weaver, and M73 scopes failed or required in-field repairs, reducing real-world accuracy and increasing accidental discharges. The gray, volcanic mud not only clogged American boots, but also caked bolt actions, requiring constant scraping to avoid misfires. George improvised a scope wipe using torn undershirt fabric, a detail noted in a battalion after-action report. Statistical analysis of the duel reveals a remarkable anomaly. Historical probability models suggest that, given 11 enemy sniper positions and the American lack of optical superiority, casualties in George's position were likely to exceed 40% per platoon if conditions remained static. However, Archival data show American losses abruptly halted after George's intervention, while one simulation, using period-accurate conditions, estimates the odds of a single marksman reversing the kill ratio to near parity in under 72 hours at less than 2 in 1,000. Counterfactuals suggest the entire 132nd's right flank could have collapsed without this reversal. For nearly 3 decades after the war, the official Army narrative, echoed in the United States War Department's 1945 Guadalcanal campaign monograph, portrayed the Point Cruz episode as a straightforward matter of American perseverance and equipment. Early after-action summaries downplayed or omitted the logistical chaos and presented Second Lieutenant John George's victory as an inevitable outcome of U.S. infantry superiority, implying doctrinal soundness and adequate provisioning. Japanese snipers were depicted only as faceless threats, their suffering unacknowledged, and casualty estimates were rounded to reinforce the notion of a tidy American tactical win, devoid of the improvisations that define the actual engagement. The historical record changed with the 1974 declassification of ordnance, quartermaster, and after-action reports, including intercepted Japanese messages translated at Camp Ritchie. Historians like Martin Clark and Linda Barabbas uncovered documents revealing that George's Winchester Model 70 was a personal purchase, officially unauthorized, and that the issued sniper teams remained critically under-equipped until after the event. Simultaneously, newfound Japanese diaries recovered from field graves offered the first account of enemy hardship, undermining the earlier characterization of an evenly matched duel, and suggesting that the Americans and Japanese alike were improvising, often in outright desperation, with basic doctrine discarded for survival. The modern consensus among military historians now acknowledges that while the original casualty count credited George's battalion with fewer than 10 American dead in the exchange, declassified medical records and revised field logs list 14 confirmed deaths in the initial 72 hours, then an abrupt drop to 2 wounded after sniper integration began. Japanese losses were previously estimated at 5, but Japanese unit rosters now indicate at least 9 confirmed killed in direct counter-sniper engagements. This revisionism brings a clearer understanding of how the event both revealed and shaped doctrinal gaps in American marksmanship, equipment distribution, and small unit flexibility under real conditions, emphasizing contingency rather than inevitability. Training manuals issued from 1944 onward, most notably Field Manual 23-10, directly cite the Point Cruz counter-sniper lesson in their margins. Before this, sniper instruction was generic and limited to marginally annotated marksmanship practices. After George's experience, the U.S. Army introduced the formation of dedicated 2-man sniper sections, emphasized field modification of civilian rifles, and implemented jungle environment scope maintenance protocol as standard curriculum. Marksmanship training, once aimed primarily at open field scenarios, shifted to close quarters, obscured visibility doctrine, fundamentally altering American infantry tactics all the way through the Korean War and into Vietnam-era sniper development. It is now recognized as a founding episode of U.S. Army sniper doctrine, with credited influence in no fewer than 5 major revisions of post-war infantry field manuals. Before Guadalcanal, Second Lieutenant John George had been a small-town Missouri accountant, tradesman by necessity, and occasional hunting guide by choice, a civilian identity defined by numbers and weeks spent in muddy duck blinds, not by daily life or death judgment. But at Point Cruz, he found himself responsible for the lives of an entire rifle platoon, crawling through undergrowth that left him soaked, his hands split from constant maintenance, and his skill as a hunter pitted against deadly, unseen rivals. The old men at my father's hardware store would never have dreamt of these stakes, George wrote in his pocket diary on January 23, 1943. Today, there is no ledger, only seconds. In the moments after the sniping ceased, the field was saturated with a blend of unfamiliar scents: vaporized cordite, rotting palm fronds, burned canvas from spent shell wads, and the acrid stench of boiled rations cooked too close to open fire for fear of giving away their position. The only mechanical sounds came from the groan of First Sergeant's boots sloshing through volcanic silt and the faint, metallic ticking of a cooling bolt-actions receiver. A snapped Lyman scope, lens lay abandoned in the mud, and the static from a shortwave SCR 536 set provided intermittent, ghost-like punctuation to the silence. Overhead, the jungle canopy dripped quietly as if reluctant to reveal the cost of the preceding 72 hours. The letter George composed to his wife that night, intended for posting with the next outbound mail runner, was laconic and careful. Dearest Helen, still holding the line, weather as ever, my rations safe, spirits up, the men did well. Nowhere did he mention the ruined hands, the hours spent biting back the urge to fire randomly into empty brush, or the fear that each shot would expose his own position. In the margins, he penciled a list of men to write home for. What went unsaid was that 3 of those families would never again see a reply. As the final phase dawned, John George's body cataloged a heavy toll. By 05:45 hours on January 25th, sweat loss and consecutive sleepless nights had left his weight down by over 6 pounds, and his hands trembled so much he nearly dropped a loaded charger. Medical records show pulse rates averaging 118, with reports of chronic dehydration and a 27% drop in effective firing accuracy among all survivors, attributed mostly to fatigue and nerve shock. Despite acute exhaustion, forward momentum was kept through caffeine tablets, field rations, and, for some, recitations of Kansas farm prayers learned before enlistment. The cost, both visible and hidden, was measured in the hollowed eyes and slow, mechanical movements of the men who survived into February. The immediate impact of Second Lieutenant John George's actions at Point Cruz was a rapid reversal in the tactical situation across a 2.1-kilometer penetration zone west of the Matanikau River. Within 48 hours of George's sniper duel, elements of the 192nd Infantry Regiment advanced, recovering previously lost trenches and eliminating all remaining Japanese sniper resistance, securing an estimated 80 meters of frontline perimeters for further use by command posts. This abrupt shift freed pinned units and permitted medical resupply convoys to traverse formerly interdicted jungle trails, cutting expected casualty evacuation times from 4 hours to under 90 minutes. Ammunition and rations reached forward rifle squads at rates unseen since 0600 hours, January 18th, stabilizing morale in an exhausted perimeter force numbering 510 men. Additional captured Arisaka Type 98 rifles and Japanese range tables became exploitable intelligence within division headquarters. At the operational level, Major General J. Lawton Collins of 14th Corps relayed direct orders to reinforce sniper adaptation throughout the 25th Infantry Division. Reports on George's Winchester Model 70 technique led to the immediate procurement and fielding of 21 civilian bolt-action rifles for field evaluation, as well as the formation of 16 new 2-man sniper teams integrated into all 3 regiments present. Headquarters, U.S. Army forces in the South Pacific, distributed a field circular on sniper doctrine, standardizing marksmanship and counter-sniper protocols by 2nd February. The success from Point Cruz accelerated joint training with Marine sharpshooters, leading to increased coordination during subsequent jungle operations along the Cocumbona front, ultimately resulting in higher forward momentum during January-February 1943. On the strategic trajectory, victory at Point Cruz triggered a chain of initiatives culminating in the clearance of Guadalcanal by 9 February 1943, officially acknowledged, under General Patch's command. With these sniper tactics validated under duress, Army Ground Forces ordered an increase in sniper instructor billets at Fort Benning and authorized doctrinal manuals distributed Army-wide by mid-1943. The confidence gained enabled the 132nd Infantry Regiment, supported by similar units, to seize high ground controlling the Sea Lark Channel, directly setting conditions for the new Georgia campaign initiated on 21 June 1943. Point Cruz became the prototype for integrating dedicated sniper units into platoon-level doctrine, influencing Army operations through the end of the Pacific War. If the Point Cruz operation had failed and Japanese snipers remained unopposed, casualty rates within the 132nd Infantry Regiment would have likely surged beyond 50 men lost within 96 hours, given a demonstrated pace of 4 deaths per 12-hour period. This attrition would have forced battalion withdrawal from vital positions near the Matanikau, opening a 1.5-kilometer gap vulnerable to infiltration and nighttime counterattacks. Supply lines west of the ridgeline would collapse, isolating the 510-man perimeter, compelling command to divert artillery and armor assets for a costly relief effort. By February 1943, extended stalemate conditions might delay the island's clearance, risking strategic timelines for the Solomon Islands campaign and subsequent deployments north toward Bougainville well into late summer 1943. By comparison, the measured American casualties at Point Cruz, 14 within 72 hours, are notably low relative to the 1st Marine Division's losses at Edson's Ridge in September 1942, where 225 men fell, holding a comparable sector over 3 nights. The immediate containment and reversal achieved using a single, non-standard weapon by a single officer stands in contrast to the massed automatic fire and fixed defensive lines used in the earlier fight. In area recovered per man lost, the 132nd's action at Point Cruz represents a higher tactical efficiency, yielding roughly 11 meters of contested ground restored for each American fatality, a metric rarely matched elsewhere on Guadalcanal or New Guinea. Modern historical consensus places the Point Cruz sniper encounter as an underrated but highly influential engagement, whereas larger battles such as Henderson Field or the advance on Cape Gloucester draw more attention for their scale. The George-led reversal is now regarded by Pacific War analysts as a doctrinal inflection point. It demonstrated the operational value of precision marksmanship over volume fire under extreme jungle conditions, influencing immediate doctrine, but also setting precedent for engagement distance norms and marksmanship standards that persisted into the Korean and Vietnam conflicts. Peer-reviewed studies and the 2022 Rand Army War College Symposium jointly classified the Point Cruz adaptation as a model case study for high morale force multiplier effects from individual initiative. Following demobilization orders, the 132nd Infantry Regiment concluded frontline action when shifted to reserve duty on 22 February 1943, with the regiment formally inactivated by 1 January 1946, while stationed on Okinawa. Surviving sniper section members were either reassigned to training cadres stateside or retained as instructors for the Army's Southwest Pacific Command, with several, including George, credited as founding personnel for post-war sniper doctrine instruction. The remaining Japanese sniper opposition was systematically eliminated in late January, closing the book on one of the Pacific War's most lethal marksmanship duels on record. Today, Point Cruz is marked by a solitary granite memorial standing at 9-25-12 Fries, 159-5436 U.S.E., erected by the Solomon Islands Historical Commission. The battlefield is also referenced within the grounds of the Guadalcanal American Memorial, maintained by the American Battle Monuments Commission. Fallen U.S. soldiers from the 132nd Infantry Regiment are memorialized at the Manila American Cemetery and Memorial, while Japanese casualties are listed at the Honiara Japanese War Memorial. These markers serve both as navigational references and as silent reminders of the men lost in one of the Pacific theater's most grueling environments. The historical record renders the Point Cruz engagement a stark equation of personnel sacrifice versus doctrinal breakthrough. 14 American dead purchased a reversal whose effect outstripped its cost by orders of magnitude, both tactically and institutionally, forging new standards for deliberate, small-unit precision warfare. The somber gravestones and lone memorial plaques ensure that the lessons, both violent and hard-won, remain observed by all who study the era's brutal campaigns. Such commemorations sustain the solemn legacy of Point Cruz as both a technical innovation and a human tragedy. Thank you for joining us as we uncovered the hidden dynamics, technical ingenuity, and historical impact behind 11 snipers versus 1, the 72-hour Winchester reversal. To explore more untold stories of battlefield innovation and personal courage that define the Second World War, subscribe to this channel and share this investigation with fellow history enthusiasts. Your continued engagement ensures that critical lessons and enduring legacies from our past remain accessible and relevant. Witness the crossroads of marksmanship, doctrine, and sacrifice. Subscribe now to stay connected with the forces that shape the world.